Off the coast of Windenburg, a family has been torn apart by the loss of their mother. And a single elderly father is left to raise 3 children in a mansion far too big for the 4 of them. But what if she isn't lost? What if the man raising those children knows exactly what happened to her? And what if the game has been telling us this whole time that he's the one to blame? Today, we're gonna break down the complete history of Get-Together's Villareal family and why their story is more crime than tragedy. And finally answer the longest running mystery of the Get-Together expansion pack: who is Jacques Villareal's wife? So pour yourself a cup of your favorite tea as we dive deep into the mystery behind Windenburg's most infamous psychopath. The Villareal family is one of Windenburg's wealthiest families. Jacques Villareal has been raising his 3 children Hugo, Luna, and Max alone ever since his wife disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The Villareals live in an absolutely massive estate on the crumbling Isles alongside Windenburg's affluent Yerksen family and famous entrepreneurs Sergio and Joaquin. The family biography implies whatever happened to Jacques' wife was suspicious, but doesn't directly state who was responsible. But our answer may lie closer to home. Jacques is in the boss branch of the criminal career, one step before becoming the boss of his crew. The game paints him as an erratic and childish individual, but if you look closer, you start to notice he's actually a rather intelligent person, even having the genius trait and logic skill at level 9. That's why I believe Jacques is responsible for his wife's disappearance, and the evidence is in the game. The Yerksens, the Fires, and the Munches are the richest, most powerful families in Windenburg, but each of them has a household fund between 20 and 25,000 simoleons. It's striking then that the Villareal's fund is 65,000 simoleons. This puts the Villareals in the same league as the Landgrab dynasty and global celebrity Judith Ward. But how is this possible? At level 9 of the criminal boss career, Jacques makes 383 simoleons an hour. He works 7 hours a day, 3 times a week, which gives them a household budget of 8,043 simoleons a week. The Villareals live on the single most expensive lot in Windenburg, valued at 266,319 simoleons. Their weekly taxes start at 11,271 simoleons, not including utility bills. That puts them at an at least 3,228 simoleon deficit every single week. This household fund is absolutely impossible unless Jacques received the money another way. Jacques is part of the Good Timers, a club whose sole focus is to drink, spend time at the bar, and have a good time, hence the name. But despite being part of the Good Timers, Jacques isn't a good person. His aspiration is to become a public enemy, which requires him to be cruel to people, get himself disliked, make an actual enemy, and watch a sim die. In real life, we call these people psychopaths. And Jacques' life of crime is a fairly new venture. His milestones reveal he had his 3 children before he joined the criminal career. And in the Get-Together promotional video Come to Windenburg, we can clearly spot Jacques making out with a young blonde woman. Which means Jacques must have recently lost his wife and doesn't really care. Something pushed him toward a life of crime later on. The question is, what? What if Jacques gave up his wife to clear his drinking and gambling debts, or even more nefariously, simply to accommodate his happy-go-lucky life? The money, the man, and the motive all point to this conclusion. But it doesn't explain who she was and why anybody wanted her gone. Some people have theorized that this woman is his wife, but I don't think that's the case. All 3 of the Villareal children have brown hair, and if you age down Jacques, he has black hair. Sims 4 genetics would not point to a blonde mother. And no, this isn't Sophia Yerksen. You see her earlier in the trailer and the hair colors are completely different. So he's a creep, but a legal creep he remains. But what if I told you that his wife is royalty? Windenburg is an ancient city, with castle-like ruins found all around the village. Over at the Von-Windenburg Estate, you can meet the ghosts of Bernard and Mimsy Escargot-Chalat, the estate's original owners who tragically perished in the fire. One day I'll do a video about the lore of Windenburg, but it's important to note the name of the lot, the Von-Windenburg Estate. The word Von is German, which means of, so Von Haunt literally means estate of the haunts. This is, of course, a cheeky wordplay on the fact that the owners are dead, but it can be assumed that their home was once called Von Escargot Chalat Estate. I mention this because the particle Von is typically reserved for nobility, which Bernard and Mimsy absolutely are. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that the Villareal's lot is called the Von-Windenburg Estate. Jacques Villareal's wife was the last known descendant of the royal Windenburgs, which means Jacques' children are nobility and he, most importantly, is now the head of that dynasty. Think that's crazy? The name Jacques is a French name that means supplanter, someone who takes over something by nefarious means, which is exactly what Jacques did. He either gave up his wife for money or took her out of the picture so that he could profit from her wealth. The game absolutely intended this. Jacques is the leader of the Knights of the Hedge, which is a club whose members wear suits of armor, call themselves knights, and spend time wandering the gardens of their home. His secret room even has medieval relics strewn about. And if you needed any more proof that The Sims intended this to be the case, the name Villareal is a Spanish word that means royal village, or more aptly, lands that belong to the king. This man desires nothing more than to be a king and to be feared by his subjects. And it looks like he is, at the very least, one step closer to achieving his dream. Jacques Villareal might be the worst person ever added to the Sims series, but he's now responsible for raising 3 children alone, and it shows. Before we jump into it, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. And drop a comment below telling me whether you agree with my theory or not. Okay, back to the video. Teenage twins Luna and Hugo Villareal are, by every measure the game gives us, good kids, which is saying a lot given their father. But because of their age in relation to the youngest child, it stands to reason that they were old enough to have known their mother, and more importantly, old enough to have been raised by her, old enough to have had someone in that mansion who cared whether they turned out okay. Luna Villareal is a social butterfly, a girl whose entire aspiration is to make as many friends as she possibly can, which seems almost intentionally rebellious given that her father is a man actively working towards being despised by everyone. She's part of the Paragons, a club devoted to looking good and being popular. Wholesome, image-obsessed, but fairly harmless. Hugo went the other direction. He's a bit of a loner, quieter, more withdrawn. Hugo's dream is to become the world's best chef, to be the guy who makes something warm for someone else to enjoy. He's part of the upper crusts, a club all about the finer foods in life. He's also part of the avant-gardes, a club for those who'd rather debate a book than throw a party. 2 kids, 2 completely different personalities, and not a single mean bone between them. Their names are also very clever hints at their personalities, which gives weight to my theory about Jacques. Luna obviously is Latin for the moon, but if you go further back, its root is the shining one. Hugo, on the other hand, is Germanic for mind or thought. You'd be surprised how much thought they put into the names of pre-made townies. It's really fun to look into. All that to say, whatever their mom did in the time she had with them, it worked. But it's the youngest, Max, where we have a problem. Max Villareal is a child, and an evil child at that. And let me be clear about how unusual that is. The evil trait on a child is almost unheard of in The Sims 4. Children in this game get to be silly or creative or gloomy at worst, so this was an incredibly deliberate choice. The household bio doesn't soften it either. It calls him a terrifying force of nature. Not a handful, not a troublemaker, a force of nature. The language you would use for a hurricane, something that happens to people rather than a person. And it's obvious why. Given his age, Max is the one child in that house who almost certainly wasn't raised by his mother. He's still just a child, so the whole window where a person learns how to treat others happened while being raised by this man. The man aspiring to be a public enemy, be disliked, declaring enemies, and watching Sims die wasn't gonna sit Max down and explain why we don't hurt people. So Max was left alone in an enormous house to raise himself, and he developed every bad behavioral trait in the book. His name, again, is a glimpse into his character. Max is, of course, short for Maximus, which is Latin for greatest, which is exactly something a spoiled and rotten child would think of themselves. At such a young age, he established himself as the leader of the Renegades, the most infamous club in all of Windenburg. Not a member, the leader. A grade schooler at the head of a crew devoted to being mean, mischievous, and destructive. And that's the tragedy of Max Villareal. He didn't become his father's opposite. he became his copy. Jacques leads the Knights of the Hedge, Max leads the Renegades. Jacques is one step from running a criminal crew, Max is already running his. But here's what's so sad about this kid. Max is in a second club. He's a member of the League of Adventurers, a children's club all about going on adventures, exploring, and just being kids. Deep inside, there's still a little boy that just wants to play and be happy. So whether or not Max can improve, I suppose, is up to you. And that's the complete history of the Villareal family. Jacques is clearly responsible for his wife's disappearance, or worse. Unfortunately, the Sims team didn't have the tools to tell his full story at the time, but luckily, now we can. In my lore save, which has now been released on my Patreon, links in the description, I'll eventually make the Villareals a dynasty and show the true connection they have to Windenburg and the rest of the town. So make sure to go check it out, and if you feel like supporting me, you can sign up for regular updates and early access to my videos. To my current patrons, thank you so much for your support. These videos wouldn't be possible without you. Also, I'm live right now on Twitch, so make sure to follow me at twitch.tv/mynameisGonz so you can watch me play The Sims, Paralives, and other cozy games. Alright, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.